Part 35. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 343. Phew. Jia Yan's speed was like lightning. He had just thought of attacking, but in the next second, with the support of a speed exceeding the speed of sound, he attacked quickly. It was so fast that he couldn't even react. At this moment, everything is operated by fighting instinct. He couldn't even respond to his approximate direction. Just when his compound eyes were frozen, looking at the scenery in front of him, Jia Yan only saw that his sharp knife-shaped horn had penetrated into the base of the huge gun barrel. The judgment he made at the moment before the attack was now directly achieved. His attack accuracy has reached an extremely powerful level. "Give it to me, break it!" Jia Yan roared in his heart. After that, the knife-shaped horns on his front feet, which looked huge but seemed relatively small in front of the huge barrel, went crazy and slashed forward desperately. Click, 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 click. In the huge barrel, there are constant cracking sounds, raging. Jia Yanfu's eyes sparkled and he was full of energy. His eyes were fixed on the huge barrel in front of him, and he was watching to vigorously activate his attack power. To get the maximum attack effect, otherwise, such a huge barrel cannot be destroyed by him so easily. This extremely huge gun barrel has a diameter of more than 5 meters. The dark muzzle still has a slightly flickering red light, which is constantly emerging. Its barrel itself is made of the terrifying hard metal of the metal monster, with a terrifying thickness of about 20 centimeters. If Jia Yan hadn't attacked with an unprecedented impact force, even his outer wall might have been damaged. Unbreakable. Jia Yan's knife-shaped horns on his front feet penetrated into the metal, and he was still using his greatest strength to destroy the monster that was firing. Die, Jia Yan almost used his own power. My compound eyes were almost bleeding. He almost used up all his strength. All he could see before him was the knife-shaped horn of his forefoot that had cut into the huge barrel. Moving slowly. Down. Down. Down again. Squeak, squeak, squeak. There was a constant sound of the knife-shaped horn rubbing against the metal of the barrel, making a deafening sound in the air. The big mosquitoes at this time are really trying their best. He even caught a glimpse of a 2-meter diameter cannon barrel below him in the ruins, and pointed the muzzle at him. But he didn't show any emotion at all. If you have already started, you must first remove the huge barrel in front of you. Let's solve it later. This thing is the biggest threat to yourself. Finally, it was the 2-meter barrel. There is already a moment when a faint red light flashes out. Boom boom boom. The huge gun barrel cut in half by Jia Yankee, its turret base. Cracks appeared immediately. Jia Yan went crazy and touched the two knife-shaped horns of his front feet together, then slashed downwards desperately. It's like flat ground. There was a huge thunderous explosion. The huge muzzle was crumbling. Slowly fell towards the ground. Jia Yan is flying in the air at this time. There was unbelievable joy in his heart. I succeeded. Ha ha. The joy in his heart could no longer be concealed. The destruction of this fort meant that his attack on such a huge building was not without the possibility of counterattack, but that he could counterattack. Although this kind of counterattack is very dangerous. Jia Yan was happy too early. The battle is not over yet. The moment he showed a hint of joy, an unimaginable and huge sense of threat suddenly emerged in his heart. Oops! How could I forget the 2-meter diameter turret below? In fact, Jia Yan was distracted by joy for only a moment. For humans, this little distraction of joy is not enough time for them to blink once, but such a small amount of time caused the big mosquito to show a flaw. The 2-meter turret below that had been aimed at him suddenly spurted out a huge amount of energy. Red light bursts out fiercely. The colors of heaven and earth have become translucent. At such a close distance, Jia Yan had almost no time to react. But there was no time to dodge, so he had to dodge. If he was hit by the blast, he didn't know how seriously he would be injured. At this time, the big mosquito suddenly gained huge power. He didn't know how his body worked. The brainwave power that he had felt extremely exhausted before was actually forced out by himself at this time. This brainwave power pushed Jia Yan's body to escape to one side at this moment. But the red light was still too fast. After all, at such a close distance, Jia Yan's escape time was only a short moment, maybe just a few tenths of a second. At this time, it was impossible for Jia Yan to move very far. Fortunately, he finally moved a little bit. But Jia Yan only felt that something was making a sharp whistling sound, passing through his body. He only noticed that something seemed to be taken away from his body, and then came the unbelievable pain that was like a heart-wrenching sensation. The incredible pain caused the mosquito's body to tremble in an instant. No. Where exactly was it injured? Jia Yan looked at his body in horror. But the next moment, Jia Yan's compound eyes, which had always been calm before, suddenly showed a hint of unbelievable horror. His compound eyes reflected an abdomen with half of its organs missing. The powerful red light before did not explode. Instead, it used its huge penetrating power to shoot a fatal hole directly into Jia Yan's abdomen. Blood was dripping down to the ground bit by bit. This injury was absolutely fatal, and Jia Yan even felt weak in his body for a moment. I want to hit the ground and lose consciousness. The impact of this injury has been too great. Jia Yan has never suffered such a huge injury before. But now, he can't just fall down. If he does fall down, death will be waiting for him. I won't die. At this moment, the desire for survival in Jia Yan's body burned again. He was really careless. If he hadn't been so careless when he destroyed the huge gun barrel on the ground, then he wouldn't have suffered such a hardship. If he can survive, he will definitely learn from it in the future and never make such a fatal mistake again. But now is not the time to think so much. Blame yourself for being too careless. What happened after that? His life is hanging by a thread. If he can't survive it, he will die immediately. His mind became clearer at this moment. By the way, Azure Crystal. I still have a way to use the Azure Crystal to mutate again. In the past, I also suffered a huge trauma, but I recovered due to mutation. Although the injury this time is more serious. But if I mutate immediately, it's still possible to survive. A blue crystal is definitely not enough to support my current mutation, so. At this moment, Jia Yan's mind was as clear as ever, and it seemed that the rotation of his head had accelerated countless times at this critical moment of life and death. He looked at the 2-meter gun barrel below that was preparing to continue the attack. The ferocity in his eyes could no longer be described with ordinary words. It was really the feeling that a monster was about to launch the strongest blow before it was about to die. Boom! When Jia Yan saw the culprit, his body was already moving. His abdomen hurts. But this pain has not yet affected his wings. Even because of the pain and the extremely powerful sense of survival, Jia Yan's flying speed at this time has reached an incredible level. The cannon barrel below is being raised, preparing to attack Jia Yan again. The previous attack was effective, and the gun barrel also lit up with a brighter light. The next moment, this light will shoot hard towards the air where Jia Yan is. Boom boom boom. But before that, a huge object was coming at a speed that cut through the air. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 344. His speed is too fast, and the barrel cannot fire red light before he attacks. Phew. The attack with the power of a creature's death blow pierced into the base of the barrel. Jia Yan's knife-shaped cuticles on his front feet seemed to be sharper, but during this period, he could hear the sharp cracking sound of the knife-shaped cuticles on his front feet that were no longer protected by the power of brain waves. What broke this time was the cuticle of the left forefoot. The left front foot can no longer attack, but I still have the right front foot. The fierce flames in Jia Yan's compound eyes became even more intense. He looked around and saw that not far away, there was another 2-meter diameter cannon with its muzzle exposed. The injury to his abdomen had begun to worsen, and Jia Yan even saw some strange organs hitting the ground. These are his own abdominal organs. Hurry! Life or death depends on this moment. The more moments like this, the calmer Jia Yan seems to feel in his heart. Although the big mosquito at this time is seriously injured and on the verge of death, his fighting power is still absolutely terrifying. Boom 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 boom. The speed of the mosquito continued to spread, and even Jia Yan himself did not notice in this situation. His attack at this time had exceeded his previous limit and was maintained at its peak state. It might be a life and death crisis that caused his survival instinct to explode, unleashing all the potential of his body. In this state, Jia Yan is more than twice as powerful. Bang! The next moment, a huge plume of smoke flew into the sky. The base of another fort was also severely destroyed by a giant mosquito. As a price, the knife-shaped horn of his right front foot was completely broken at this time. Jia Yan's two most powerful weapons simply lost their effect. But in this place, at least in the ruins, no gun barrels are seen anymore. There may still be some among the collapsed ruins, but they cannot appear. Jia Yan is not worried. What he seizes is time. As for those metal monsters, they are nothing to be afraid of. Quick, quick, quick. Blue crystal. He used his unbroken midfoot to quickly pull the turret base in front of him. Click. Sure enough, a blue crystal appear in front of Jia Yan. There is no time to read more. Jia Yan used his midfoot. He also copied this azure crystal. The azure crystal from before has been placed inside the muscle diaphragm tissue under the wings. There has become a place where Jia Yan often stores things. Because the diaphragm tissue has a groove, it is very convenient and safe to store small things. Jia Yan also used his midfoot to use this azure crystal. Tucked in easily. His movements didn't stop after that. Keep flying. Another 2-meter gun barrel that was damaged by the previous attack fell to the ground. There was also no sound at all. Jia Yan passed directly without even stopping. I picked up the azure crystal in its base. And the last and most likely place where I can survive. In Jia Yanfu's eyes, there was a strong desire to survive. If it were a human being. The entire abdomen was damaged, and the front and back were exposed. Such injuries. Humans must have died long ago, but Jia Yan still relied on his tenacious will, or the tenacious vitality of wild creatures, to survive. Even in this state, he is still alive and kicking. If there hadn't been another fatal blow, he could have survived even longer. But there's not that much time left. Jia Yan didn't want to think that even if he had a chance to mutate, he would be unable to recover. At this time, he directly took out the blue crystal from the second barrel. Now he has 3 azure crystals in total. But he knew that this was definitely not enough, so he set his sights on the largest cannon barrel, the 5-meter huge cannon barrel that he had finally destroyed. This gun barrel is already in a fallen state at this time, but it looks like a green onion. Jia Yan flew over quickly. There must be enough azure crystals here for what I need, there must be. He is full of hope. But he was afraid of losing his hope. At this moment when his life was hanging by a thread, he almost didn't dare to think about what his result would be if there were no azure crystals in the barrel at this time, or if there were fewer azure crystals. Jia Yan's body came to the back of this huge gun barrel. After the base of the gun barrel was completely damaged by him, it was facing up. Jia Yan could clearly see the state of the gun barrel. In fact, in Jia Yan's opinion, this kind of gun barrel is even rougher than his own aircraft. His aircraft is already a rough product in the Asta civilization. The construction of this gun barrel, the craftsmanship looks even worse than that of his aircraft. It seems to be made with simple technology. But it's no wonder if Dave Filoni and the others are right, these buildings including the gun barrels are made by those metal monsters. This is probably what these mining machines can produce. Jia Yan didn't have time to think so much. At this time, the metal monsters on the ground finally came back to their senses from the continuous explosions. They all saw that Jia Yan was thinking about this huge gun barrel, and they are all going crazy, emitting the most powerful red light they can. Swish, swish, swish. Red rays of light kept hitting Jia Yan's body. It hurts. There's nothing on the body, but the wound is hit, and the pain in the abdomen is excruciating. We have to hurry. Jia Yan didn't dare to look at it, and directly thrust his mid-foot into the inside of the barrel base. In fact, the space inside this base is huge, and it is already much more complicated than the other 2-meter diameter barrels. If Jia Yan were a human, he could get in and look for the blue crystals inside, but now he is a huge giant mosquito monster. Not to mention getting in, even when exploring and entering with the mid-foot, it seems a bit obstructive. But at this time, Jia Yan's slender feeling in the middle of his feet was also reflected. The front part of the mid-foot is constantly groping. After that, Jia Yan's heart moved. Immediately, a crystal that seemed larger than the previous azure blue crystals was taken out by Jia Yan. It's definitely more than this, there must be others. Jia Yan thought of this, and put the collected crystals into the wing diaphragm tissue with one mid-foot, while the other mid-foot continued to explore. The metal monsters below looked like jumping monsters. They angrily attacked Jia Yan on the ground. But after Jia Yan discovered that their attacks could cause some damage to his already injured self, he curled up on the base of the gun barrel. The red light of the metal monster below was directly blocked by the base itself, without any attack. Possibility of defeating him. Jia Yan is still working hard at this moment of life and death, and the human fighter jets rushing over there for help have finally reached the sky above Suzhou at this time. However, these 10 fighter jets were all flying at an altitude of several thousand meters. Looking at the scenery below, no one had the idea of going down. In fact, they can't see any scenery at all. I just saw rays of fire and the sky full of smoke and dust flying everywhere. Each of these pilots was extremely horrified. Even during this period, metal monsters came from one after another, attacking the big mosquito on the base of the turret, but missed, and the red light flying into the sky was aimed at these 10 fighters. Suddenly, each of these fighter planes was like a frightened bird, and several of them were so frightened that they immediately started to escape. The other ones opened the launchers of the missiles they carried at once and smashed them down casually. At this time, they were all in chaos. Report. The battle between the giant mosquito and the metal monster is too fierce. It seems that we can't help. Please request to return. The pilot who led the team directly issued a request to return. He was flying a J-20, which was the most powerful fighter independently developed by China before the war. However, the pilot of this fighter at this moment seemed extremely timid. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 345. The choice made by the pilots is also normal. If it were not for this caution, these pilots would have died in the metal monster invasion war for more than half a year. So in this situation, when these characters saw that the battle below had turned into such a terrifying scene, their eyes were about to pop out with shock, and at the same time, their first thought was to think of strategic retreat. Doing something you know you can't do is the behavior of a fool. You know, they had seen this place before, with the kind of violent explosion that could only occur when an atomic bomb was detonated. How could they participate in such a battle? Withdraw. The red rays of light attacked more violently, finally scaring away the last traces of courage from the group of fighters in the sky. One by one, they turned around and retreated quickly. These human fighters left this place smoothly after successfully finishing the fight. As for Jia Yan below, he didn't even know that above his head, a team of helpers who wanted to come and help had appeared. Now, he has fallen into a state of collapse caused by excessive blood loss. If he doesn't get the mutation quickly, it might be too late. Hurry up. Just when he felt himself getting weaker and weaker, Jia Yan put his middle foot into the barrel and suddenly felt a huge thing. After that, Jia Yan suddenly felt a surprise in his heart. Not long after, he took out his midfoot from the barrel. The front end of his midfoot is hooked on something. The appearance of this thing made Jia Yan happy. It was a huge crystal that was as huge as 10 ordinary blue crystals. Although the color of the surface of this crystal also felt blue, the blue in it exceeded all the blue crystals Jia Yan had ever seen. It is no longer an ordinary blue, but a blue that is so blue that it is almost black. Jia Yan looked at this huge blue crystal. Its surface was filled with radiance and a strange aura. Is this enough? It should be enough. There should be nothing left in it. Jia Yan looked at this huge blue crystal with a diameter of 30 to 40 centimeters, and his instinctive desire was to devour it. There was even a bit of a scary feeling at this moment. It seems to indicate that this thing is not something he can absorb now. But Jia Yan has no choice. That's enough. Find a place quickly to see if there's still time to mutate. Jia Yanfu's eyes once again had the light of survival. A towering huge building. At this time, less than half of his body was still standing. There is no power left to continue to destroy him. But Jia Yan still tried hard to flap his wings. Fly high into the sky. The metal monsters below are still trying their best to attack. Each of them used huge power. But for Jia Yan, his body was injured except for the abdominal area. Other parts are not afraid of these attacks, so at this time, he just paid a little attention to his injured parts. The attacks of those metal monsters will only be in vain. The flying pattern of the giant mosquito is a bit shaky. Fly high into the sky. His body is at this time. He was already out of power, but it was impossible to stop his flight directly because he knew it. In this world, he is the only one who can save himself. Others cannot and cannot come to rescue him. Although he didn't know it, a group of human-piloted fighter planes had actually come to this place, but they had already left. Otherwise, it might have changed Jia Yan's idea slightly. Of course, nothing goes wrong. Jia Yan thinks that he is still here alone, fighting against this metal monster building. The result this time is not so ideal. It can only be said that both sides suffer losses. Don't worry. At least I got so many azure crystals here. These azure crystals must be enough for me to mutate again. The dark body, carrying injuries and fatigue, flew quickly towards a distant place. The metal monsters passing below seemed to have received some instructions, and they climbed to high places one by one. Snipe at Jia Yan. Although these attacks were not dangerous to Jia Yan before. But now he is seriously injured. Therefore, the big mosquito's body in the air is becoming more and more unstable as it keeps shaking. But his body is still moving extremely fast. Just after leaving the city for a while, Jia Yan found that there were not so many metal monsters around him. After all, there are not many metal monsters in Jiangnan. The ones that besieged him before are still distributed in other places. So when he came to the wild area, the attacks he suffered would immediately be much less. He circled around and finally descended to a place where no metal monster could be seen for dozens of kilometers nearby. This area is a large mountain forest. Jia Yan only felt that the world in front of him had lost its luster and everything was spinning. This was the result of excessive blood loss and the loss of body organs. He was really injured. In other words, it is incredible to be able to persist to this point. He didn't know where he saw it. Jia Yan just saw a dark place in front of him and ran into it. Mutations. Quick. As soon as Jia Yan's body hit the ground, a trace of condensation slowly flowed out from his body. Perhaps it was because the injury was too serious, but the appearance of these condensations was not optimistic. Oops. My consciousness has been blurred. If I can't hurry up, I will definitely die before the mutation unfolds. Perhaps due to the blessing of his soul, Jia Yan took out a blue crystal hidden under the tissue of his wing diaphragm at this time. He didn't think much at all and took the blue crystal to the injured part. As soon as the azure crystal came into contact with this part, there was a strange change. The damaged part of his body seemed to become a place that accelerated the absorption of azure crystal. Immediately there was a blue color, and through decomposition, it quickly reached the internal organs. After that, this azure color suddenly dyed the entire body slightly blue. Jia Yan could no longer think about anything and just took out a few pieces of azure crystals. After that, his body fell directly into a semi-conscious state. I don't know how much time has passed. Maybe an hour has passed, or maybe half a day has passed. Jia Yan slowly came over from his coma. He felt his body. At this time, he is no longer the tiny mosquito that was unfamiliar with mutation. Now, he is extremely familiar with the process of mutation, so he can draw conclusions about the extent of his mutation through the changes in his body. It has actually begun to mutate. I survived. Jia Yan felt his body. When he woke up, he didn't wake up naturally, but the mutation began to occur. He was directly stimulated by the pain of the mutation that even the body cells decomposed and woke up. In his body, he can still feel the huge injury in his abdomen, but this injury has stopped getting worse due to mutation. Very good. This is the interdependence of blessings and misfortunes. If I had not been injured, it would never have been possible for me to mutate so quickly. After all, I am already as powerful as I am, and the process of mutation is definitely not a short one. It will happen again in a few months. While Jia Yan was suffering from the pain of this mutation, he was thinking about things to distract himself. Otherwise, he will definitely be invaded by the feeling of pain again, which will be extremely painful. The condensation on the body has slowly flowed out, and all the objects on the ground have been slowly absorbed. Through his huge compound eyes that could still see a little bit of things, Jia Yan finally discovered that the place he was in was actually like a huge factory. This place should be like a metal workshop built by humans, so there are precision instruments everywhere. But this place must have been abandoned for a long time. After all, the war between metal monsters has begun, and many similar places have been abandoned. Jia Yan's huge body directly occupies most of the workshop area in this place. There are mountains and forests outside this place, and there is a workshop roof covering it, so it is still very hidden. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 346. But what surprised Jia Yan even more was that at this time, the condensation on his body covered many precision machines one by one. Each of these machines is made of circuit boards and a lot of high-grade steel. Although it is not as good as the things he used in the aircraft before, it is definitely good enough. Among the few pieces of blue metal placed on the ground, the smaller ones have disappeared. Only the bluest piece is still holding on, still extremely strong, and still provides a lot as it is slowly absorbed by him. The substance is distributed into his condensation. The condensate then spreads these blue colors throughout the body through blood vessels until the mutated effect is achieved. Suddenly, a huge wave of pain attacked Jia Yan. Sure enough, mutation has never been so painful. It hurts. Jia Yan almost hunched over from the pain. But he still observed the changes in his body. The confrontation with the mutant power has already begun since the first mutation. At that time, he had been resisting every mutation. Although there was no evidence that this was the reason why he could survive the mutation every time and survive every time, Jia Yan at least believed that he could fight the mutation. The longer he resists the pain, the more his willpower will increase. Although Jia Yan's strong willpower can be shown every time he does anything, in his heart, he always feels that he is not a person with strong willpower. So he is still encouraging himself. You still have to strengthen your willpower. This kind of person is ruthless to himself, so he can become as outstanding as ever. It hurts. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. Jia Yan, you have to hold on. Jia Yan didn't watch anything, and he didn't have the intention to watch. He only felt that his body and every tissue were decomposing. His compound eyes, which were about to lose their brightness, were just staring at the liquid condensed by his body on the ground. A huge blue crystal that slowly decomposes. Jia Yan naturally knows. This crystal is not an ordinary azure crystal. It can be said that most of the credit for its mutation being able to progress to this point is due to the help of this crystal. Without it, the devouring process might only be halfway through. The condensation has no power to mutate, and his body will just die like that after that. Jia Yan really has to thank this huge blue crystal. But look at it. The condensation slowly covered his compound eyes. He felt that his eyes were decomposing in great pain. After. Never see anything again. After continuing to fight against the pain for a while, Jia Yan finally completely lost consciousness and fell into a long mutated sleep. What he didn't know was, at this time, the metal monsters were all going crazy. A huge structure built by metal monsters on the Earth. According to statistics of people on Earth, there are roughly between 50 and 60. This is because the metal monster's structure cannot be monitored by Earth satellites. Therefore, we can only roughly estimate this number through places that cannot be observed. The structure of this kind of building is actually not complicated, but metal monsters can only build so many. This is because such a huge building requires the use of a lot of star-condensed matter. The so-called star-condensed matter is naturally Jia Yan, the azure substance mentioned. As mining machines, these metal monsters regard these precious minerals as more important than their own lives. In one fell swoop, a building was breached by Jia Yan, and even the most important one, a piece of concentrate in the star-condensed substance, was robbed. How can this not cause those metal monsters to become furious? Each of these monsters is a being with low intelligence, but their cherished thinking about minerals has been written into a program and is deeply engraved in their structure. So after the giant mosquito disappeared, these monsters went crazy, one by one, searching quickly along the place where the giant mosquito disappeared. However, Jia Yan has entered a new mutated state. In this state, his vital signs will be reduced to the lowest level. Under such circumstances, his traces will not be discovered so easily. In this land in the south of the Yangtze River in China, the situation suddenly became weird due to the repeated disturbances of this 10-meter giant mosquito. Near the Shanghai Stock Exchange, traces of the entire metal monster suddenly became difficult to find. And there are some monsters that don't attack at all when they see humans. They just see the frightened humans, turn a blind eye one by one, and just move forward quickly, as if they are searching for something. Of course, such situations are still rare. Most of the time, metal monsters will not be stingy with the time of a red light, so humans who see metal monsters can only say it depends on their luck. Overall, the reduction of metal monsters made this area clear at once. In fact, the giant mosquito broke through a metal monster red light building in Suzhou, not far from Shanghai, once again causing an incredible uproar among humans. The 10-meter giant mosquito monster is using his unimaginable fighting ability to break human expectations again and again. Originally thought that he could only deal with a few hundred metal monsters, but in a small plain area less than 100 kilometers away from Shanghai, this giant mosquito fought with tens of thousands of metal monsters. If it weren't for the huge red light, when the attack comes, no one dares to imagine what the final outcome of the battle will be like with 1 against 10,000. At that time, humans had already seen that this 10-meter giant monster was no longer a creature that humans could look at with a mentality of watching the monster tease it. Afterwards, this monster even faced countless red light attacks. With the power of the body, he flew into space. You know, that is the universe where humans need to launch rockets to go. But he just flew up like that. It's really scary. At that time, the whole world was hotly discussing the matter of this giant mosquito. But this is far from everything the 10-meter giant mosquito has done. Just when some worried people suspected that the giant mosquito monster might have gone to the universe and never returned. Within a few days, this powerful 10-meter giant mosquito monster returned to Earth. He even brought 5 machines from an alien civilization that made human scientists crazy. These machines, through the pitifully rudimentary communication network of mankind, can almost detonate the entire world the moment they appear. The giant mosquito monster is obviously to enhance the technological strength of the people on Earth. Together with him, we can deal with the metal monster. Are there such good mosquitoes in the world? Countless people, when they heard the news, even loudly promoted the benefits of giant mosquitoes, and excitedly told their relatives and friends who had not heard the news about the good news. It has even been stated with certainty that the giant mosquito monster race, this race that humans have determined is definitely much more powerful than the metal monster race, is a race that can even fight the entire metal monster race alone. Already on the side of mankind. The most powerful giant mosquito monster known to mankind today has even learned the human language. When handing over the mechanical remains of the alien civilization to humans, he expressed his friendly intentions in Chinese. God knows how these people discovered Jia Yan's friendly emotions towards human beings through his brief words with the Chinese military. But mechanical matters are still other aspects of human concern. They know that having such a powerful giant mosquito monster race as their ally is the most important thing. After all, the time required for research will not be too short. And having an ally that is so powerful that you can even discover the existence of an ally that may be more powerful than the metal monster is a benefit that you can see right before your eyes. That giant mosquito monster made another move after handing over the mechanical remains of the alien civilization to the people on Earth. That was truly a huge shock to all human beings. He actually single-handedly attacked the metal monster's lair, which was the huge building that emitted red light. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 347. You know, humans feel that the existence of these huge buildings is an obstacle that humans cannot overcome. No matter what kind of weapons humans develop, even if they can deal a fatal blow to metal monsters, they have no chance of victory in the face of those red light buildings. Some humans even suspect that as long as the metal monster uses all the huge buildings, it will only take 3 days. All human cities will be completely destroyed, and more than 90% of the current human population will be exterminated. The remaining human beings will only be able to survive in the corners of the world, waiting for extinction. But this giant mosquito monster, with the results of the first battle, seems to have explained to humans that the red light building of the metal monster is not an impossible to break steel frame. Even if it is made of steel and iron, the giant mosquito monster race can use its invincible strength to completely destroy these buildings. Yes. That battle was so intense that the sky was dark and the earth was dark. It was really flying sand and rocks, and the earth was cracking. This statement is not an exaggeration at all. Even the entire city, which was no longer deserted, was once again plunged into a sea of fire due to this battle. The giant mosquito monster still seems to be in a difficult battle. But as a result, he still won. A 10-meter giant mosquito. He actually completely destroyed a behemoth that was more than 300 meters high. That huge building collapsed. Now, the human world is truly shocked and noisy. They were shocked by the fighting power of the giant mosquito monster. What's more, this giant mosquito monster seems to be an ally of humans, so I'm also extremely surprised. Such a powerful ally, even if there is only one of him, is definitely the most exciting thing for human beings today. Some people are even delusional. There are so many giant mosquito monsters now, and they all seem to be bigger and stronger. It would be great if there were stronger individuals. That is, even bigger giant mosquitoes. Come to help us. It's a pity that these people's opinions have just been formed. He was severely refuted by those so-called biologists. Giant mosquito monster race. Even if it is an alien life form, it still has to follow the laws of living things. Since it is a living thing, it is impossible to cross such a huge shackles of life all at once. This giant mosquito can be among the giant mosquito monster races. To become so powerful must have become a typical individual. I haven't seen those giant mosquitoes before, or even have individual bodies. Is it only a dozen centimeters in size? Even that small giant mosquito monster is just a newly born baby giant mosquito. But it is almost impossible for him to grow to the 10-meter large body of this giant mosquito. It is impossible for biology to verify such a creature, even among alien life. This possibility is also unlikely. Biologists have used various methods of argument to prove that the giant mosquito monster cannot grow from a size of more than 10 centimeters to a life form of 10 meters or even larger, because no matter what, it is impossible to say pass. In fact, this is also a way for them to dispel the expectations of ordinary people. After all, the current giant mosquito monster is actually a bit weird. Even these human scholars will not imagine that the giant mosquito is just the same thing. However, but they can also feel the sense of disobedience on the giant mosquito monster. In this case, let alone a bigger giant mosquito, even the current giant mosquito seems to be like the moon in the flower in the mirror. It seems that it will disappear at any time and become an existence that can never reappear. Therefore, in order to prevent people from relying too much on the help of giant mosquitoes, high-level human beings ordered these scholars to try their best to eliminate people's dependence on giant mosquitoes. But does the giant mosquito race have an even bigger existence? If there is, then how terrifying will that existence and its combat power be? This question also accompanies the psychology of many experts. They themselves have such questions. At the same time, they actually have no understanding of the so-called cosmic creatures. The previous words are just to deceive the public. But what these people don't know is that somewhere unknown to everyone, a huge creature seems to be conforming to people's ideas, quietly gestating. The impact of the Battle of Suzhou goes far beyond that. That area was originally under the satellite and could not reflect any images, but after the huge building collapsed, the scenery there was revealed under all the spy satellites. The collapsed building has been rebuilt with the efforts of thousands of metal monsters. The construction capabilities of the metal monsters are really too high. They are building at a speed of 100 meters per day. In just 3 days, that huge building appeared in the satellite images again. Afterwards, a force that shields satellite exploration appears again. This discovery shocked all the humans. The red light buildings that the giant mosquito monsters had finally destroyed were all repaired by the metal monsters so easily. So no matter how hard humans try, they will destroy the metal monsters' buildings one by one. Wouldn't it be the same useless effort to build 2 buildings? Thinking of this, a feeling of despair is slowly growing on the human side. Under such circumstances, the fact that the 10-meter-long giant mosquito monster disappeared directly after that battle was also magnified. Human public opinion is like this. It will change in 3 or 4 days. It seems that the joy of the giant mosquito monster defeating a red building is still before our eyes. In the blink of an eye, 3 or 4 days later, overwhelming public opinion news is about this giant mosquito monster again. Mosquito monster. This public opinion news is not a good thing, because the giant mosquito has not appeared for several days, so some reporters are publishing articles to discuss whether this giant mosquito monster was seriously injured in that battle, or even died. Although many people sneered at this news, The giant mosquito monster had always been a mysterious monster race in the past. It would disappear for a period of time every time, and then another one that was more powerful and bigger would appear, but this time the news does not seem to be affected by those who question it, and it even gets louder. The previous giant mosquitoes did not show that the power of a single one could almost overturn the combat effectiveness of the entire metal monster race. But now this 10-meter giant mosquito is different from all the giant mosquitoes that appeared before. Not only does it the combat power is terrifying and astonishing, and it is also a being that can communicate. With such a being, humans will naturally become confused if they care about it. However, no matter what kind of discussions humans have, these topics cannot affect the mutating giant mosquito. What those humans don't know is that a bigger monster is really about to appear. Jia Yan's mutation will last longer. In the small workshop, a huge thing resembling a silkworm cocoon crowded the entire space in the workshop. This place was originally an inaccessible place. I don't know why the person who founded this factory set up the factory here, but it did a big favor to Jia Yan. At this time, the metal monster has sent out at least 10,000 people in the direction of Jia Yan, searching quickly. However, their search direction covers a vast area with numerous mountains and forests, and there are some resisting human villages along the way. Battles occur from time to time. Although it is impossible to cause much damage to the metal monster army, there are endless traps. Such things still greatly delayed the search of the metal monster army. The situation has turned into an anxious one. At the Shanghai Military Research Institute, just 3 days after contacting the giant mosquito monster, many aircraft of various types from all over the world arrived at this military temporary airport. What got off the plane was a well-known being in the scientific community. These beings were top scientific figures in various disciplines. They were all invited to come to China to participate in the 5 mysterious alien civilizations. Mechanical research. In this life and death situation for mankind, research that should have been completely secret before has become a grand event for the entire scientific community. I'm feeling a bit unwell today, so this chapter will be updated later, sorry. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 348. Many people laughed at this news. The giant mosquito monster has always been a mysterious monster race in the past. It would disappear for a period of time every time, and then another more powerful and larger individual would appear. I believe they will be no exception this time. However, the news this time does not seem to be affected by those who doubt it, and it even becomes popular. The previous giant mosquitoes did not show that the power of a single one could almost overturn the combat effectiveness of the entire metal monster race. But now this 10-meter giant mosquito is different from all the giant mosquitoes that appeared before. Not only does it the combat power is terrifying and astonishing, and it is also a being that can communicate. With such a being, humans will naturally become confused if they care about it. However, no matter what kind of discussions humans have, these topics cannot affect the mutating giant mosquito. What those humans don't know is that a bigger monster is really about to appear. Jia Yan's mutation will last longer. In the small workshop, a huge thing resembling a silkworm cocoon crowded the entire space in the workshop. This place was originally an inaccessible place. I don't know why the person who founded this factory set up the factory here, but it did a big favor to Jia Yan. At this time, the metal monsters have sent out at least 10,000 people in the direction of Jia Yan, searching quickly. However, their search direction covers a vast area with numerous mountains and forests, and there are some resisting human villages along the way. Battles occur from time to time. Although it is impossible to cause much damage to the metal monster army, there are endless traps. Such things still greatly delayed the search of the metal monster army. The situation has turned into an anxious one. At the Shanghai Military Research Institute, just 3 days after contacting the giant mosquito monster, there were many aircraft of various types from all over the world. Arriving at this temporary military airport, got off the plane. He is a well-known being in the scientific community. These beings are some of the top scientific figures in various disciplines. They were all invited to come to China. Participated in the research of those 5 mysterious alien civilization machines. In this life and death situation for humanity, research that was previously supposed to be completely secretive. It has become a grand event for the entire scientific community. Although it is impossible for the research on these machines to produce results so quickly, things are indeed going in order. Slowly progressing in a good direction. Time flies, 1 month. For ordinary humans, it doesn't take long. But for people in war, a month seems like a year. Every day seems like a year. During a month, the war between metal monsters and humans took place. It's not over yet, and the metal monsters haven't completely stopped the war because of the appearance of the giant mosquito. There are still countless humans every day. Death in the red light of the metal monster. Every day, countless human gathering points are completely destroyed by the metal monster army. Tragic incidents can always be seen in the news and media. The war situation is still heading in a bad direction for mankind. It seems that human beings, who claim to be the soul of all things, were completely defeated in the battle with the army of metal monsters without any backhand strength. This was still the case when the metal monsters seemed to have not tried their best. If Jia Yan told the story that these metal monsters are just mining machines from other cosmic civilizations, how many humans would open their eyes wide and scream in disbelief? However, Jia Yan did not reveal his secret thoughts. He just wanted to see how powerful human beings' war background is at this time. Otherwise, he would not be able to tell everything. After all, for human beings, let alone the upcoming Wengxing civilization exploration ship, even these mining machines are not something they can deal with. In that case, what's the difference between Jia Yan saying it and not saying it? At least let him see mankind show its war potential, and then he will consider whether to tell the story about the upcoming appearance of a bigger enemy. The metal monsters from the outside world are still wandering around. They have been searching for a long time in Jiangnan. There are not many metal monsters in China, and some of them have participated in the protection and reconstruction of several buildings, so there are even fewer hanging around. Coupled with the need to fight with the Chinese military, the number of metal monsters is actually insufficient. But there are still more than 10,000 metal monsters appearing near Jia Yan's factory. In the workshop of the factory, a huge cocoon-like thing is constantly rising and falling. There seemed to be a prehistoric giant beast among them, just about to emerge from its chrysalis and look proud of the world. That's right, inside this cocoon is Jia Yan's evolved body. In 1 month, based on his past mutation times, it would be time for him to be born. Jia Yan's consciousness did indeed recover in the cocoon. I can't actually go out. Wasn't it possible to go out when I regained consciousness before? He regained consciousness, but felt that his body could not go out for the time being, and the restrictions around him were extremely great. And he discovered that his organs still had not completely mutated. If he forced himself to escape from the mutated cocoon formed by the condensation, what awaited him would only be death. I don't know how long it will take. Jia Yan looked at his body helplessly. At this time, he didn't know how long his mutation would last. His compound eye organ has not yet completely condensed and formed, and other organs are also in the same state. So at this time, he didn't even dare to move. After all, if something happened at this time, no one knew whether it would have any impact on his body in the future. At this moment, Jia Yan looked at his body. This body has not been completely condensed yet, but its general appearance can already give a glimpse of it. Just taking a look at himself, Jia Yan was shocked. It has already appeared. His previous body was 10 meters long. What was even more terrifying was that each of his long legs stretched out to a length of 20 meters. But now the prototype of his body is already about 17 meters tall. You know, this extra 7 meters is definitely not that simple. If he was 10 meters before, he has already begun to take on the shape of a supergiant. It felt like a mosquito, but for him now, it was not the same feeling. An extra 7 meters of elongation means an increase of nearly 2/3 of the body length, which is like a 5 or 6-year-old child growing into an adult. 17 meters. An absolute behemoth. The title of supergiant mosquito is well deserved. Jia Yan saw his body. Although there were subtle changes, his body still looked like a giant mosquito. The slender mouthparts represented his current appearance, which was not much different from before. Very good. Even if I am lying on my stomach, my height will soon break through the ceiling of this workshop. At such a height, I am really looking forward to how huge my body will be when I am born, and what kind of situation it will be like. Jia Yan looked at his current body. He knew that he had not yet fully developed the last part of his body. So I didn't dare to try my strength, but my compound eyes were filled with expectation. While Jia Yan was still looking forward to it, a young child's voice, not far from him, screamed in surprise. "Mom, look, this big cocoon is moving." Someone. Jia Yan, who was in the cocoon, felt a slight movement in his heart, but at this time, he had nothing to fear. The voice was obviously that of a human child, an ordinary human being. Even if Jia Yan had a body that had not yet fully mutated, the other party would not even think about it. Hurt him in the slightest. They must be humans who have taken refuge in this place, Jia Yan thought. Sure enough, outside the huge cocoon formed by Jia Yan's mutation, there was a family of 3. This family has been staying in this place for half a month. They fled from a nearby city. After losing contact with other refugees, they fumbled on the mountain road and came to this factory by accident. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 349. When they first saw such a huge cocoon that looked like a living creature, the family was naturally shocked. However, under the pressure of life and death, they had no other place to go. As a result, in the cold winter, the family chose to live in this workshop. The family lived on the surplus food they carried. In addition to searching for some wild edible plants nearby every day, I can still live a reluctant life. During this period, they gradually became familiar with the huge cocoon they lived next to, from fear and worry at the beginning. Even on the 3rd day after Jia Yan woke up, he listened to the mother of the family outside and said, "This thing has been here for a while, and it is quite dusty. I will come and clean it all right." "Okay, help clean the little cocoon." This child was about 7 or 8 years old. I don't know when he actually gave the cocoon that Jia Yan turned into a silkworm cocoon the name Little Cocoon. Not long after, Jia Yan felt the sound of water washing through the thick condensation on his body. This family is a good person, but I don't need their cleaning. Jia Yan felt a little bit dumbfounded. But at this time, while hiding in the huge cocoon, he listened to a family of 3 worrying about money, rice, oil, salt, sauce, vinegar, and tea every day. For some reason, his mood slowly calmed down. "Xiao Yu, let me tell you, have you ever seen the Steel Superman? That Superman is just like my dad. He will turn into Superman if he has a steel bar in his hand. He is very powerful just like my dad. Dad, have you noticed that the little cocoon seems to be releasing heat all the time, so the area around this workshop is very warm? What exactly is the little cocoon? I hope it's not a monster." "Haha, no matter what kind of monster he is, he didn't hurt us. If it can continue like this, it can help us survive until spring. Then we will go to Shanghai together. It is said that there are no metal monsters there anymore. No matter what, I will definitely protect you two when they go to Shanghai, for sure. Unless, I die. Jia Yan listened to the family's conversations outside every day, and he felt the bitterness of these ordinary people's refugee lives. There is also a different kind of sweetness. He seemed to have become a member of this family, worrying about life with them and enjoying the rare family affection in the war. During this period, it seemed that the more killing, the lonelier the days in the past. Slightly relieved at this time. When the mutation time came to the 35th day, Jia Yan found that he could use the power of brain waves. Then something strange happened in the life of this family. That is, there are often things that they want to do but are very difficult to do, but they suddenly get them done without even noticing. Huh? I just said that I was going to fetch water from the well outside the door, but why did it fill up a bucket? There have been so many weird things like this recently. The man's strange voice came out. Jia Yan was in the huge cocoon, smiling slightly in his heart. The family didn't know what was going on in the factory. They felt weird and a little worried at the same time. But there was no other place to escape to at this time. And these strange things don't seem to be harmful to them, and can even be said to be a good thing. So in desperation, I slowly got used to this scene. People are creatures that get used to it easily. Within a week, even when Jia Yan was operating his brain waves, the family occasionally saw strange scenery. They were just surprised, but they calmed down after that. For example, carrying water in the morning. Jia Yan feels the cold winter. Carrying water early in the morning was quite uncomfortable, so he used his brainwave power every morning to fill the mechanical grooves used as temporary water basins for the family. As a result, on the second day after doing this, I was suddenly seen by the mother of the family. She was still exclaiming at that time. After all, anyone who sees his flying bucket will exclaim. But only about 3 days later, they were completely used to seeing such scenery again. Jia Yan slowly began to have more contact with this family. Little cocoon. You must be helping us, good boy, good boy. Finally, at one point, Jia Yan heard the outside of the cocoon he had transformed into. There was a little boy's voice. He seemed to be whirling in the cocoon that Jia Yan had transformed into. Jia Yan felt speechless, as if he was being treated like a pet. But this feeling was also a brand new experience. Except for a little bit of laughter in Jia Yan's heart, he didn't have much resistance. It's just a child anyway. However, this feeling of family affection, just as Jia Yan continued to mutate slowly, when the time came to the 40th day of his mutation, a huge change suddenly occurred. That day, the father of the family never came back since he went out to look for wild vegetables. The next day, the child's mother went out to look for her for a long time, and then returned to this temporary home amidst the child's cries. She didn't seem too sad. He just told the child that his father went to a relative's house in Shanghai and would definitely come back to pick up their mother and son after a while. But at night, Jia Yan heard the mother's cry. He silently radiated his brainwave power, and saw the mother holding a blood-stained dress in her arms. Jia Yan reluctantly recognized this dress through the weak eye ability of the brainwave power. Just that father's thing. There is no need to guess what happened to him. Jia Yan could even sense that when the mother was crying outside the door in the middle of the night, the child huddled in a corner sleeping was also sobbing constantly. This is a smart kid who already knew what was going on. Jia Yan also heard him hiding under the ragged quilt, muttering in a low voice, "I am a man. I am the Steel Superman. I want to protect my mother." Jia Yan looked at the remaining mother and son and sighed in his heart. But he couldn't do anything. At this time, he was a helpless person. After all, it was impossible for him to act during the mutation process. Within 2 days, the mother returned to the workshop with bloodstains all over her body when she went out. It was a penetrating injury caused by a metal monster. Her arm was injured by an unknown metal monster, and one arm was completely seriously injured. She was seriously injured, but she still worked hard for her son. But because he didn't receive effective help, the wound became inflamed. On the second day after her serious injury, the mother developed a high fever. After that, it was the son who was less than 10 years old who started working hard as a family. After crying for a whole day, on the third day after my mother was seriously injured, this little man shouldered the responsibility of a man. I am a man. I am the son of Steel Superman. The man wiped away the tears from the corners of his eyes. He wants to protect his mother. He followed the example of adults and started fetching water early and went outside to look for wild vegetables. I don't know when this child learned to recognize the appearance of wild vegetables. Although he didn't gain much, he always fed his mother first, and then himself. Jia Yan looked at this scene. Although he knew that scenes like this were everywhere in today's world, he still couldn't help but feel a heartache in his heart. In the workshop, he began to take more care of the little boy, but he could not reach places further outside with his brainwave power. Therefore, he had no other choice but to worry about the child who went out alone. Just when his mutation reached the 47th day, the mother of the child was already so angry that she had no way to save herself. That day, the little boy went out and never came back. Jia Yan felt a little uneasy. He released his brainwave power to the limit, but still didn't see the little boy. Just when the sun was about to set, a small, but definitely manly figure staggered into the workshop. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 350. When Jia Yan saw the child's appearance using the power of his brain waves, he felt his heart being pinched hard. Excruciating pain. It seems that compared with the pain during mutation, it is not too much. He saw that the little boy was also injured. One of his eyes was bleeding, and his legs were also stained with blood. His limping appearance was unbearable to look at. "Mom, I came back from digging wild sweet potatoes. After washing them, you can eat." The child walked up to his mother, squatted down, and shook her mother gently. But the only person who responded to him was his mother, who barely opened her eyes. She couldn't eat anything anymore. Perhaps it was just the strong desire to see the child that made this poor woman persist for so long. "Mom, you eat?" The child seemed to have a premonition of something, and 2 lines of tears rolled down his cheeks. The mother shook her head gently, looking at the miserable child. She was extremely painful. The child is so young, and in such an environment. If she dies, the ending of this child can be imagined. How could she die like this? But no matter how unwilling you are, what can you do? Death is not something that can be escaped easily. Within a few minutes, the mother was finally in the arms of her child, unwilling to close her eyes forever. "Mom, these are wild sweet potatoes. I won't eat them at all. Just open your eyes and eat them." The little boy held his limp mother in his arms and cried loudly. When Jia Yan was in the cocoon, he seemed to see that the child's mother, just before her death, seemed to be asking him, an outsider, to take care of her young son. Maybe the woman didn't think so at all, but Jia Yan thought so in silence. The mutation is not healed yet. Jia Yan felt that his mood was extremely gloomy. He slowly moved his body. Maybe it's because the mutation isn't completely complete. So looking at the body that seems to be complete, it has been successful. But it's still restricting his movements. He could only continue to wait. But not long after, Jia Yan saw that the children outside also sat down slowly. He was tired of crying. At the same time, physical injuries also began to occur. He was too young to know that he was injured. It's also a life hanging by a thread. This little man sat weakly on the ground, his breath gradually becoming deeper. Jia Yan in the cocoon was shocked. Using his own brainwave power to make a little observation, he discovered that this child was actually not weakly injured. God knows how he held on. Carrying a pile of wild vegetables, I reluctantly returned to the workshop. Unfortunately, the child is already acting very manly. But I still didn't give my mother the last wild vegetables to eat. Just 1 minute and 1 second for Jia Yan. Waiting for your own cocoon to break out? Click. Click, click, click. Clear voices appeared outside this workshop. Accompanying these voices is that powerful sense of crisis. Jia Yan noticed it. This is a metal monster. After more than a month, these metal monsters finally found his location. This workshop will no longer be so safe. However, the big mosquito at this time still has not mutated successfully, and it belongs to the time period when the combat effectiveness is the lowest. The footsteps of the metal monster outside the gate slowly approached. Even the boy here felt it. His originally weak eyes opened tiredly. A metal monster body appeared in the child's sight. The expression on the child's face suddenly became extremely excited. It's all you. If it weren't for you, my parents wouldn't have died. In fact, as an 8 or 9-year-old child, he didn't know that his father had encountered misfortune before going out, but his mother wanted to hide it from him, so he followed his mother's wishes and pretended to really think that the way my father arrived at the Shanghai Stock Exchange. The child didn't know where the strength came from. He suddenly climbed up from the ground, took it off and leaned against the wall. His father found the steel bar as a weapon. It was the steel bar that made this young child think that his father was the steel Superman he saw in the cartoon. My father was killed by these vicious metal monsters, and now it's his turn to become the steel Superman. It's his turn to become a man. Ah 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 ah. Holding the steel bar, the little boy was like a little warrior, charging towards the 5 or 6 approaching metal monsters, screaming and charging. But how could the 5 or 6 metal monsters over there take this child seriously? They just have a slight red color emerging from their heads, as if they are looking inside the workshop, the super huge biological cocoon that almost occupies the entire space. Perhaps these metal monsters have discovered at first glance that this huge, cocoon-like thing is their target. But that human child was also an eyesore. In the eyes of the metal monster, this is just a noisy human larvae. You can kill at will. Therefore, in the head of a metal monster, the red light appeared with a faint luster. It seems that the next moment, this child will be killed directly with a ray of light. The light slowly emerges. Right at this moment. Boom. A huge sound sounded. The child felt that the steel bar in his hand suddenly had incredible power. It seems to be his own power. He screamed harder. The steel bar grasped by the palm suddenly burst out with strength. The child's body also seemed to be flying. He felt that his parents had spirits in heaven and gave him strength. At this time, he was an invincible man. Yeah. Go to hell. His childish voice, in the night sky, was just like the upright Superman he saw in cartoons, full of manly feeling. Just as he thought, he flew into the air, and then slammed his steel bar against a metal monster. He did it. Bang. A loud voice sounded. The steel bars smashed the metal monster's head away. Fall to the ground far away. The body of this metal monster was still standing in front of the child, as if he couldn't believe that this little human larvae could actually kill him. Ah 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 ah. The little steel Superman continued to shout. He smashed his weapon against another metal monster. While the metal monster was dodging, a red light shot out from its head. However, this little boy seemed to fly into the sky and avoid the red light. In the fierce battle, he didn't even realize that this evasive flying action was not what he had in mind at all. Boom. The steel bars severely knocked off a metal monster's head again. The metal monster below actually stiffened up at this moment. He was about to self-destruct. Boom boom boom. There was almost no time for people to react, but in less than a second, the metal monster exploded on its own. The raging fire covered the entire ground of the feature film. It even involved 2 other metal monsters in the self-exploding flames. This self-exploding flame filled the area for hundreds of meters. But during this period, a small body was already intersecting quickly. It seemed that the body had a light protective film, completely protecting his body. He flew and hid in the sky. Find the book garden. The little boy looked at the flames below. Although the flames also burned his body, they were all blocked by an inexplicable force and could not burn his real body. Suddenly, a tear rolled down his face. The steel bar fell from his hand. That force did not stop the steel bars from falling, causing them to fall directly into the flames. Dad. Mom. Ah. In the night sky with flames flying, the cry of a little boy was heard far away in the middle of the night, far, far away. And in the meantime, in the workshop in flames, there was a huge body. Gently tearing open the cocoon in front of him, he quietly stepped out of his huge body. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 351. This body has a huge, shining compound eye, but the light shining in the compound eye at this time seems more complicated. He looked at the little boy wrapped in the power of his brain waves and flying in pain in the sky, and sighed lightly in his heart. Seeing such a tragic scene, the joy of successful mutation seems to be gone. During the process of Jia Yan's mutation, the family was able to relieve a certain amount of his loneliness, but now it looks like this. Jia Yan saw that the female body in front of him was already possessed by blazing flames. Another long sigh. Not long after, the huge body slowly flew up from the sea of fire. The appearance of this body is absolutely terrifying. In the past, he was fully meters in length, with 6 long legs stretched out, covering an exaggerated area of 40 meters in radius. But now, he has a terrifying body of 17 meters, and his huge level has once again risen to a level. In the past, Jia Yan's body could cover 40 meters, which was an exaggeration, but now he can cover a huge range of nearly 70 meters. One front foot is as thick as a reinforced concrete pillar. And its hardness is even worse than that of reinforced concrete pillars. At this time, Jia Yan was confident in the power of his mutation, but he focused more on his small body protected by his midfoot. The huge body is as indescribable as covering the sky and the sun. His shadow quickly crossed the earth in the night sky, covering a large area below so that it lost all light. The metal monsters may have received the signal from those metal monsters, and thousands of armies gathered towards the side. But they could only look at the figure flying across their heads, and they had no idea what to do. I won't cause trouble for you again. Jia Yan looked at the metal monsters below. These monsters seemed even smaller to him now. He felt that his body had grown bigger. The perspective of looking at things also becomes different. Just like the little mosquitoes in the past, looking at things like human houses, they felt that they were a huge world. But now, let alone a house where humans live. Even the majestic building of the metal monster was destroyed by him. In his opinion, human houses are no different from paper. So do these metal monsters. Jia Yan didn't know that he would mutate so much again, or even use the azure crystal to mutate. How powerful will it be? But at least he could see it himself, facing the metal monster. Even when he looked at the huge metal monsters under his feet, each one jumping towards him and emitting red light, he no longer felt the slightest sense of worry or fear. This matter. It means that his level now is definitely different from before. The strength is also much stronger. Boom 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 boom. In order to take care of the seriously injured and unconscious child in his arms, his body slowly accelerated, facing countless red lights, and slowly accelerated to a speed of about twice the speed of sound. The two mid-legs are lightly intertwined. Protect this child. It seemed that everything had returned to the scene during the war just after he had mutated and emerged. But this time Jia Yan had no intention of getting entangled with these metal monsters. There is a little life in his middle foot, so he spreads his wings. This child and his family gave Jia Yan a feeling of home for a while, a feeling that Jia Yan had not experienced for a long time, so he still wanted to let the last child live. Even if the speed of sound is doubled, it is still the speed of ordinary civil aviation aircraft. Originally, the distance between this place and Shanghai was only a short distance of more than 200 kilometers, so it took Jia Yan only a few dozen minutes to take the little boy with him. Arrived at this place. In a hospital that is still operating. There are so many patients here. In a war like the end of the world, getting sick is the most miserable thing. No matter how much money and energy is spent, some people cannot be cured. Some people are clearly terminally ill, but they can only die alone in a corner. The reason is that hospitals have become even more in short supply. Not only are the medical fees high, but the number of places is also limited. But this thing will not happen to Jia Yan's body. Just when this hospital is busy. Boom 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 boom. An unbelievably huge sound roared from the sky and the earth. People looked up one by one, but they all looked as if they had seen a ghost. Perhaps the scenery they saw was more surprising than seeing ghosts. This is like a moving fortress in the sky. A huge body of nearly 20 meters, with a terrifying wingspan of 35 meters. The 6 long legs are stretched out, reaching a length of nearly 70 meters. This is no longer a living thing. Even the largest civil aviation aircraft of mankind is only this size. It's simply a flying fortress. Isn't this a giant mosquito? But, this is much bigger than the previous giant mosquito. How many giant mosquitoes are there, and how big is the largest one? Didn't some scholars say some time ago that giant mosquitoes can no longer appear in larger sizes? Due to the appearance of giant mosquitoes in the past, humans who now see such a huge giant mosquito monster are still frightened, but at least they have not panicked yet. But outside the hospital, the people who were preparing to see a doctor slowly became frightened. They only saw the huge thing in the sky that covered the moon, approaching their direction with a rapid movement. Getting closer and closer, the huge appearance of this body became more and more clear. Finally, under a large swath of light, this terrifying creature finally began to land on the empty field outside the hospital. His huge body is incomparable to the extended trucks around him. The height alone is easily more than 2 floors high. This is still the prostrate state of a giant mosquito. If all 6 of its long legs are erect, maybe this 10-story hospital building will not be as tall as him. Compared with the 10-meter-long giant mosquito monster that appeared more than a month ago and opened the door to cooperation with humans in one fell swoop, this one is obviously another incredibly powerful giant mosquito. But how did this giant mosquito appear? Hello. Please treat this child. Jia Yan's long foot slowly stretched out at the moment when everyone was frightened. In his middle foot, carefully protected by it, was a little boy who had already passed out. His brainwave power has definitely grown tremendously during this mutation process, and the way he uses it has also improved due to waking up early and constant training. So now I can speak very smoothly. The nice male bass resounded throughout this hospital. Okay, Mr. Giant Mosquito. A large group of nurses and doctors, under the watchful eyes of Jia Yan, ran out of the hospital building. All of them were extremely nervous. This giant mosquito monster looked like it was obviously not the same individual as the one that was friendly to humans. God knows if it still adheres to the friendly purpose of the previous giant mosquito. As for those patients, go to Shuyuan. All of them looked at Jia Yan. They didn't dare to accuse him of such an obvious behavior. After all, this is a giant mosquito monster. Human laws, how can it be the same to him? It works. People are amazed that giant mosquitoes can actually talk. And this kind of speaking is not through the mouth, but through an organ they don't know. It can even spread throughout the entire hospital. Maybe this is where life in the universe is more advanced. The giant mosquito monster has long been positioned as a cosmic life form in the understanding of people on Earth. Some people took out their mobile phones or other things to take pictures of giant mosquitoes. Compared with other places, Shanghai, which has been baptized by the flames of war, not only has not suffered any further setbacks in the past month, but also has not been intruded by metal monsters for more than a month, and has even restored basic people's livelihoods such as the internet, allowing more and more people are gathering towards the super city. After these people finished taking photos one by one, they sent Jia Yan's now huge figure to the internet. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 352. And this time it is a completely different and larger individual than the one humans knew before. This news became popular on the internet in an instant, and spread to the entire Earth through the internet. Compared with the enthusiasm among the people, some senior officials in the army in Shanghai were frightened and a little angry. What do these idiots want to eat? A giant mosquito has actually come to Shanghai again, and even the radar system can't detect it. If it's a metal monster, wouldn't the Shanghai market be destroyed in one fell swoop? These people were extremely horrified, and at the same time, they also felt surprised by this giant mosquito that was said to be even larger. Because their radar system was unable to detect the approach of this giant mosquito monster, God knows if this one is more powerful than the one that disappeared before. Jia Yan didn't know that his body could no longer be detected by human military radar, but even if he knew it, he wouldn't be surprised. You know, the main substance of his mutation this time is the so-called star condensation. It's also the azure crystal he mentioned. One of these things that even powerful civilizations have to rob can give the former Jia Yan a huge increase in defense. It is not surprising at all that it can cause him to become invisible on the radar. However, Jia Yan didn't mind any of the surprises and various discussions of these humans. There were even some military scientists who immediately approached the top brass of the human military and proposed contacting and cooperating with this even bigger giant mosquito. He no longer minded. Even if he did come to contact him, Jia Yan might not respond again. He knew that he was now powerful to another level. Mutating once is not that simple. If he used to be 10 meters tall and had a headache that could make metal monsters jump, then he is now. Jia Yan knows. Maybe if I try my best now. Maybe the metal monster is no longer his opponent. Just after Jia Yan handed the little boy over to a few doctors who had the courage to come in front of him. He explained a few words, and then his wings calmed down. It started to flap. Even though he was very careful. However, the flapping power of the huge wings still gently pushed the car under its feet. Then he collided with another car. Boom. A gentle sound. Jia Yan could only shake his head in embarrassment, feeling sorry for the unknown car owner and hoping that the insurance industry would still be operating. Anyway, he won't pay compensation or anything. Now that I have reached this level, the first step is to remove the nearby metal monster. Clean it up. The giant mosquito body quickly flew into the sky. At this time, Jia Yan was still angry. All the time. Jia Yan knows that under war, people's lives are extremely miserable. But if it really happened in front of him, and it was someone he interacted with, he would still feel angry in his heart. Certainly. After another mutation, Jia Yan also wanted to see how powerful he was now. Very good. The small mountain village does not appear to be under attack. Without anyone else, Jia Yan quickly returned to the small mountain village where his parents and sister lived. After more than a month of development, this place seems to be getting stronger. The fortifications are still continuing. It can be seen that this small mountain village not only did not decline because of the metal monster attack, it has even grown at least twice as big. What Jia Yan didn't know about Jia Yan at an altitude of 5,000 meters was that although this village was somewhat isolated from other places, the giant mosquito monster once protected this village alone, and even said that he would protect this village. Matter. After some people spread the word, in more than a month, even many people in Shanghai have heard this thing that is similar to an urban legend. Although most people did not believe such rumors, many people still gathered here, causing this village to begin to develop faster. Jia Yan didn't care about so many things. He was just high in the air, using his compound eyes that had undergone so many mutations and had become incredibly powerful to observe the bottom. Not long after, he found a young and energetic girl in the village below. It seems they are doing well. After seeing his sister, Jia Yan roughly knew from her behavior that his parents were probably fine, so at this time, he put down his worries. He wasn't going to descend anymore. Jia Yan was thinking that maybe he shouldn't have more contact with his family, and it would be a good thing to let them live such an ordinary life. Of course, if there will be situations in which he has to contact him again in the future, he is also not sure. But now, as long as he knows that his family is living well, that is enough. Okay, let's get started. Jia Yan finished looking at the small mountain village, and then his compound eyes moved away from the small mountain village in the deep mountains below. The rare tenderness in his eyes gradually disappeared after seeing his family. The appearance of the family in the workshop made him irritated, and he still remembered the several times he was seriously injured by metal monsters until now. If it wasn't a metal monster, how could he be so fast and have to risk mutating again? After several ponderings, Jia Yan discovered that every mutation he made was actually a gamble. Every mutation of a creature represented a huge evolution. Generally speaking, if a creature wants to evolve through evolution, it takes time to transform into another powerful posture, at least millions of years of precipitation, and the transformation will be successful gradually. Even humans, who claim to be the masters of the earth, have gradually evolved from apes that could only jump up and down trees to the humans we are today over millions of years. But every mutation of Jia Yan is nothing more than a huge evolution like this. Let me ask, if the successful evolution of hundreds of millions of years and countless generations of life can be compressed into one individual creature, will the risk still be small? But Jia Yan not only endured it once, but also so many times in a row, and even this time span was less than a year in total. Experiencing so many mutations in such a short period of time is a huge pressure on any individual's body and mind. Jia Yan even doubts that if he is not a mosquito with memories of past lives and has good ability to withstand stress, even if the mutation was successful in the past, but maybe he committed suicide under the huge psychological pressure. The mutation process is not something ordinary people can endure. But Jia Yan not only endured it once, but also endured it so many times in a short period of time. Thinking of these, Jia Yan felt angry. In addition to the matter involving the child and his family, it's time to settle accounts with you. Jia Yan looked at the mountain village. His body was 5,000 meters high. From this height, the earth that could be seen was extremely far away. This area as far as the eye can see is Jia Yan's first goal. With the small village as the center, all metal monsters and all their buildings within a radius of 500 kilometers. Clear them all. I don't believe it. I have undergone another mutation, and even the material used is azure crystal. I will not be able to do this. Boom 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 boom. The supergiant mosquito reappears. The giant mosquito body moved quickly at this moment. With the small village as the center, this is also to protect the family. As for other places, if eating in other places will be affected by the ensuing war, then you are asking for blessings. Jia Yan will not worry so much about other people. Even if he goes to the Shanghai Stock Exchange, he doesn't care so much, not to mention that there is also his own military strength there. Jia Yan is not worried about whether it will be affected by his battle with the metal monster. A truly upright war, pitting one against tens of thousands, is about to break out. At this time, the Shanghai Stock Exchange and the entire human world were still immersed in the news of this giant mosquito monster that suddenly appeared again without any warning.